Welcome to Songs of Hope and Center Home Groups. We're so excited to have you with us today. I'm especially excited because we're starting a new series on the parables of Jesus. But first, the announcements that all of you love to hear. Two things I want to bring up to your attention today. The first is coming up October 22nd. We're going to have our annual trunk or treat in the parking lot of Center Church, and it's a chance for you to decorate your trunk, decorate yourself. We're going to have a costume contest for the top 3 prizes. We're going to also have free hot dogs, drinks, and chips for anybody that is there. And on the last Thursday, I know it's a little ways away, on the last Thursday of October, we're going to have our service here all together like we always do. But this time, we're just going to have soup and talk and fellowship, and we're going to have incredible praise music to worship with. But we would love for you to be a part of that. If you would like to bring a bowl of chili, just let us know. You can sign up here again at Center or make a comment here on the YouTube channel. Tell your home group leader, whatever is easiest, and we'll make a spot for you. And here again, that's the last Thursday of October, and we'll keep reminding you as we go forward. We hope you enjoyed today's message. I don't know how many of you ever did what I did as a child. I know many kids did, usually just a minor thing that we think of, and that is we get so upset at our parents that we decide we're going to run away. We can do it all by ourselves. In fact, it was ironic, the movie we just had, our outdoor movie, was exactly that at the end. The little girl ran away because she didn't like what her parents were doing. And so I did this when I'm guessing about 7 or 8 years old. I know I was still living in the farmhouse in Marion, so I know that I was under 9, and I was just so upset at my parents that I thought, I'm getting out of here. I can do this so much better on my own. So I grabbed up some belongings. I think I made a couple of bologna sandwiches that would last me for weeks, and I grabbed up my piggy bank, everything I needed, and I started to go down the road. And I may have made it an hour and a half, before it dawned on me that I don't know where I'm going or what I'm going to do, and I quickly came home and changed my mind. Now, the reason I talk about this is we're talking about somebody today in the parable of the lost son. We're going to talk about somebody who walked away, wanted to do things his own way, did not want to do things his father wanted him to do. And so I'm so excited that we're starting a new series called The Parables of Jesus. Stories of Jesus. This is so much how Jesus talked, and they're littered all throughout the New Testament. It's usually how Jesus would respond to questions that came to him. So we're going to look at BibleStudyTools.com to talk to us about parables. It says the parables of Jesus make up a crucial part of the Bible. Jesus had the wisdom to simplify the profound spiritual truths that he needed to share with humanity in the form of reliable stories that are easy to understand. A parable is a tale about a common subject to illustrate a more profound, valuable moral lesson. The source definition of the word parable actually means a placement side by side for the purpose of comparison. Now we're going to look at Luke 15, and this is probably my favorite parable. I thought if we're going to start with parables, I might as well start with my favorite one. And I just love how Jesus points about how God the Father should be to us, all of us here on this earth. And we're going to start off in Luke chapter 15, verse 1. Now with this, remember, we just went through Acts, right? And remember, I said Luke actually wrote the book of Acts, which was a continuation of his gospel of Luke. So this is the first part of what Luke wrote before we go through Acts, what we just went through. And so we're looking at Luke chapter 1. And he says, now the tax collectors and sinners were all gathered around to hear Jesus. But the Pharisees and the teachers of the law, they muttered. They said, this man welcomes sinners and eats with them. Now, this isn't where the parable starts, but there's 3 parables, one after another after another. And he keeps talking about the kingdom of heaven, what it's going to be like. And here you see, as Jesus always was, he had compassion, he had mercy, he had love for the people who were neglected, people who were put down. And the religious leaders were the ones saying, what are you doing? How are you even acknowledging them? That's not what a religious leader should do, which they had it so backward of what God the Father was like. So now we're going to look at the actual story, which is Luke 15, started verses 1 through 32. Now, I'm not going to read all of these, but I'm going to read quite a bit of these as we go forward. And so Luke, here again, this is Luke talking to so many different people around the life of Jesus, and he just investigated what it was like in the stories he told. And it says in verse 11, Jesus continued. So he was continuing on after the 2 other parables. He said, there was a man who had 2 sons. The younger one said to his father, Father, give me the share of the estate. So he divided his property between them. Now, if you know anything about this story, especially back in these days, it was much like today, honestly, where the inheritance wasn't given to a child until after the father had passed away. But here the child is saying, you're as good as dead to me. I don't want to be around you. I want to run away. I want to do my own thing. Hence the story of so many of us running away at times. Not long after that, the younger son got together all he had and set off for a distant country. And there he squandered his wealth in wild living. So he had everything he wanted. He had his freedom. He had the money. But what happens? We often have this freedom and we take so advantage of it. We just don't care and don't think about the consequences of letting all that go. So after he had spent everything, there was a severe famine in the whole country, and he began to be in need. So not only was he in need because he had squandered all the money, on top of that, there was a famine. So it made getting anything, any food, any nourishment, any kind of a job almost impossible at that time. So he went and hired himself out as a citizen of that country, who sent him into the fields to feed pigs. Now, what I love about this story is Jewish people did not connect with pigs because they were looked at as unclean. So when Jesus is giving this story, this parable, the Jewish people would have thought back, wait a second, he's actually being around pigs willingly? They knew he had to be desperate at this point. So he longed to fill his stomach with the pods that the pigs were eating, but nobody gave him anything. Well, when he came to his senses, he finally dawned of what he'd done. He said, how many of my father's hired servants have food to spare? He's remembering back to all of the servants at home who had plenty, who had need, even though they were working for him. And here I am, I'm starving to death. I will set out. I will go to my father and say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and you. He was preparing a speech here. And he's going to say, I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. So make me like one of your hired servants. Just make me like a servant. That's all I ask. I know I neglected you. I know I treated you like you were dead. Just forget all that. I will just work for you, but I need to have something stable, something regularly to eat and a way to live. So he got up and went to his father. But while he was still a long way off, and I love this part, his father saw him and was filled with compassion for him. So his father, how does he see his son so far away off? Now, we don't know how long this period it was, but for him to go through all that money and a famine and to get a new job, this had to be months, if not years. Yet the father is still watching for his son. Every day, I imagine his father out there with a big set of binoculars, just waiting, is my son coming? Is my son coming? Now, they would have had a different kind of binoculars that we have now, but I'm sure he was just waiting. And when he saw him, he was filled with compassion. And then he ran to his son, something that they didn't do back then. There was no jogging back then. So Jesus was saying this man was so excited that he ran. He ran and threw his arms around him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and against you. I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. He went into this script, right? The script that he had prepared to say. But the father, he pretty much ignored him. I think he put up his hand. He said to his servants, quick, bring him the best robe, the best clothes, and put it on him. Put rings on his finger and sandals on his feet. It's like, I don't care what you did. You're here, and we're going to treat you like royalty. Bring the fattened calf, the father said, and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. They were going to have a big old party. For a son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they begin to celebrate. And that's a great part of the story, right? But there's a second part that Jesus really wants us to know. He goes, meanwhile, the older son was in the field. When he came near the house, he heard the music and the dancing. He's like, there's a party. What? I didn't know about a party going on in the house. I didn't get an invite. Nobody sent me a text to come to the house. What's going on? And he had to wonder what it was. So he called one of the servants together and he asked him, what's going on? Why all the loud music and the celebration? Well, your brother has come, he replied, and your father has killed the fattened calf because he has him back safe and sound. So the older brother would have been so excited, right? His brother was back. His family is back, the one they thought was dead. But the older brother became angry and refused. I got to ask, how many times have you read this? I know I have. And think, you know what? The older brother has a gripe because he has done everything he needed to do. He did everything that was asked. Yet his younger brother took all his money and squandered it. And after all that, he's not punished just a little bit? but we're going to see why here. So the older brother did become angry and refused to go in. So his father went out and just pleaded with him. His father wanted him there. He said, please, come here. But he answered his father, look, all these years I've been slaving for you. I never disobeyed your orders. But yet you never gave me even a young goat so I could celebrate with my friends, and I was here with you. But when this son, my brother of yours, has squandered all your property and prostitutes come home, you kill the fattened calf for him. And the father just pleads, just quietly tells his son. He said, my son, the father says, you are always with me. Everything I have is yours. You were never lost. But we have to celebrate and be glad because this brother of yours was dead. Now he's alive. He was lost. And now he is found. What I love about this story is Jesus is painting a picture of what our Father in heaven is like. That no matter how far we run away from him, no matter how many times we disobey him, no matter how many sins we do against him, he is always waiting to take us back to the very last breath we have. He will always take us back. He's watching just like the father of the prodigal son. In ESPN's documentary, The Four Falls of Buffalo, that recounts the story of the Buffalo Bills' 4 consecutive Super Bowl losses from 1990 to 1993. And as a football fan, this would just drive me nuts, being so close but not being able to bring it in. Well, most of you know, if you're a sports fan, that the field goal kicker was Scott Norwood, that he would shoulder the greatest weight because of the first one in 1990 between the New York Giants and the Buffalo Bills. With 8 seconds left in the game, he had his chance. But Norwood misses a 47-yard field goal, which in the NFL is pretty manageable most of the time. And no one felt more pain than Norwood. Even 20 years after his failed attempt, here's how he describes his feelings. Sorrow, I guess, and disappointing, and letting down my teammates. They're there in the field to battle with me. I still get choked up today thinking about it, putting myself back in that situation. But nothing prepared Scott Norwood for the greeting he would receive in Buffalo the next week. And you can imagine, you know how rough sports fans can be. They were probably ready to jeer him. They probably just so upset at what he did for their team. But nearly 30,000 screaming fans met Norwood and his teammates in Buffalo after the loss. Many of them chanting and screaming, "We want Scott! We want Scott!" And here's how Norwood described the scene. We got back to town. I didn't know what to expect. What I really wanted to do was just remain behind the scenes. He wanted to shy away because he had so much responsibility in this loss. But there was a chant that just kept intensifying. I was not expecting to be called out to the front like that. I had to speak off the top of my mind and just real quick. You know, I think in a sense, that's where the truest feelings arise. The documentary shows Scott with a mic in hand, just telling the crowd, I know that I've never felt more loved than I do right now, he said. Expecting and maybe even deserving condemnation, Norwood found a small taste of amazing grace. Here again, it's times like this I'm reminded what God gives us every single day, the grace that we receive through his son, Jesus Christ, his only son. He sat through a painful death and was resurrected just so you could have a chance at eternal life. And he's like the prodigal son, or he's like the father of the prodigal son, just saying, please come home. Please just come home to me. And he'll always take you back. I'll leave you with a quote from Lee Strobel, the author. He goes, grace is an amazing gift that we don't deserve or cannot earn or contribute to. It's lavish, it's undeserved, it's extravagant, it's unmerited favor that God bestows freely to those who are willing to receive it. Accept that grace in Christ. Have a great week. Soup